My name is Kelvin G. I'm the Senior Director of Modern Marketing Business Transformation at Oracle. It's a long, fancy title, and all it really means is that I get to travel the world and evangelize modern marketing and train and enable our marketers around the world on things like technology, automation, content marketing, digital strategies, as well as storytelling. Now, as Andrew suggested in his opening remarks today, storytelling is a really hot topic, but it's a technique for content marketing, but it's only one technique. But that's something that we're going to be talking about. But in my journey around storytelling, what I've been frustrated around is I attend a lot of workshops and conferences like these where they talk about storytelling, but they talk about the value of storytelling, why CMOs love storytelling, but very few conferences and workshops or even content on the internet today tells you how to tell stories. And that's what my presentation is about. In my journey, I found and developed a very simplistic but actionable framework for how marketers and content creators like yourselves can tell stories. Okay? But first, let's talk about content and the state of content today. All right. Most of us are content creators, right, or content marketers. And what this study shows is that most of us do some form of content marketing today, which is great, except there's a lot of content out there, and it sucks, right? So information abundance equals attention scarcity. So according to this survey from Forrester, B2B buyers say that vendors give me too much material to sort through, and much of it sucks. And you're hearing about this term content density out there, right? Which is this tremendous explosion of content on the internet, right? 2017, this year alone, Google will index 305 trillion pages on the web. In the year 2020, we will have 5 internets from now. So we'll take a snapshot of the internet today. We'll have 4 more of those in the year 2020. So as marketers, I always preach and evangelize the fact that our hardest and greatest challenge is earning the right to converse with our customers. Attention is the new oil, because not only are we competing with our normal competitors, we're competing with our customers' friends, families on Facebook and Twitter, and other brands that they have liked and followed, right? So it's not just our competitors we need to be concerned about. It's the attention and earning that right to talk to them and maintaining that right. And you might have also heard that it's official, humans have a shorter attention span than goldfish. Right? This was a study done 2 years ago. Is it true? Maybe. Or maybe not. If you look at all the content that's out there on HBO, Showtime, Netflix, AMC, right? We willingly devote hours upon hours and hours consuming and binging on great content, right? So maybe our attention span isn't shorter than a goldfish, because that would require a change on the genetic level, and I don't quite think we've evolved that much yet. Maybe it's not a matter of attention span, it's a matter of interest span. Growing up, my favorite movie critic was Roger Ebert, American film critic for the Chicago Sun-Times, and I love this quote: "No good movie is too long, and no bad movie is short enough." Right? We know this to be the truth. And so if you believe in storytelling as a way to break through that noise and that clutter, right, as a technique as content creators to create more compelling and engaging content, then where do we begin? Well, if you Google storytelling, there will be no shortage of content out there on why storytelling is great, but not enough content on how to tell stories. And I realized that there's actually a prejudice to storytelling. There's a prejudice because just because we think we can understand what a story is, it doesn't mean that we can tell it. And as a comparison, we've all seen thousands and thousands of pieces of art like this one. But chances are, most of us in this room cannot paint something like this or cannot draw something like this, right? We need to learn painting techniques, drawing techniques. We need to learn perspective. Many of us have heard thousands of songs, but chances are many of us cannot compose or write a song. We need to learn how to read notes, write notes, scale. And many of us have read great works of literature, but chances are, right, we can't necessarily write something like this, but we think, for some reason, we think we can tell stories just because we can read them. So the point here is, just because we can speak, write, or hear stories doesn't mean we can tell them. So first, let's define what is a story. And who better to ask than Robert McKee? Robert McKee is a very famous Hollywood creative writing instructor. So if you are a budding scriptwriter for TV shows or movies, you know who Robert McKee is, and you've probably taken his course on storytelling. So according to Robert McKee, a story is a series of dynamic and progressive, not repetitious, events that change a human being's life. Now, I put a lot of emphasis on dynamic and progressive. Dynamic because stories need to be dynamic. They need to move the audience from one emotional extreme to the other, right? We've all seen the movie Up, right? In the beginning of the movie, it goes from sad or happy to sad, happy again, right? Those emotional swings are dynamic. Progressive, right? You need to move the story along. We all seen those videos with numbers and statistics that just keep throwing at you over and over and over and over again. That's not a story. A story needs to change a human being's life, right? It needs to be meaningful, and nothing's more meaningful when it changes someone's life. So that's what a story is. Okay. So let's try something here.
Howdy, y'all. This here's Mike.
Can you hear this?
Down at Mike's golf shop, where we buy golf. That's right. We buy golf clubs. Mike's golf shop. Come on over here. We buy golf clubs. Over at Mike's golf shop. Come on down here. We buy golf clubs. That's right. We buy golf clubs. We buy golf clubs. We buy golf clubs. We buy golf clubs. We buy golf clubs.
Hopefully that's not your idea of marketing.
Walking the roads of our youth, through the land of our childhood, our home and our truth. Be near me, guide me, always stay beside me so I can be free. Free. Let's roam this place, familiar and vast, our playground of green frames, our past. We were wanderers, never lost, always home. When every place was fenceless and time was endless, our ways were always the same. Call my demons and walk with me, brother, until our roads lead us away from each other. If your heart's full of sorrow, keep walking, don't rest. And promise me from heart to chest to never let your memories die.
So why use storytelling? Well, first, it's more memorable, right? Studies have shown that you'll have a 20% better recall, right, when we use storytelling techniques. Second, it engages your audience, right? You saw the contrast between the first video and the second, right? One was repetitious and noxious, and the other one was actually engaging and interesting, if not entertaining. And finally, educate your audience without overwhelming them with information. We have data. We live in data. Data is our friend. I'm not saying data is bad, but when we over-rely on data, it becomes paralyzing. Okay? Studies have shown that your audience is 22 times more likely to remember a fact or statistics if it's wrapped in a story. And if you don't believe that, just remember that most people don't tell bedtime facts. Okay, so discussion time. Now that we've defined a story, we've seen examples of good storytelling and some a bad example of storytelling. What makes a good story? What are the 4 signposts? There are 4 signposts that make a story. What do you think they are?
Okay, so you have to be able to talk about how things are now and how they could be.
Okay. Contrast. There's definitely an arc, so there's structure to story, yes. But what are the 4 elements? So all stories need structure, but there needs to be 4 elements, at least. Dynamic, okay, but that needs to be an element.
Conflict.
Thank you. You got 1 of the 4. Conflict, very good. Who else?
Character.
Character, excellent. That's 2 out of 4. Resolution. You saw my notes ahead of time? Very good. 3 out of 4. Most people forget this one. Not bad, not bad. Setting. You guys know setting. 4 signposts for storytelling. Setting, character, conflict, resolution. Setting. The time, the place of your story. The character or the protagonist of your story. Conflict. If your character gets everything he or she wants in life, it's going to be the most boring story in the world. There needs to be conflict. The power of your story is in the negative path, not the positive. Resolution. Most people love happy endings, so you need to have closure. You need to resolve that conflict. Now, when you tell your story, you can start with a setting or a character and then setting. Those 2 can be interposed. All right? You can start with one or the other. But generally speaking, you want conflict in that 3rd spot and resolution in the 4th. Okay? Unless you're a brilliant director like Martin Scorsese or Christopher Nolan who can tell a story backwards and forwards and backwards again, which I would not advise, but unless you're that person, I would stick to this tried and true formula. Okay?
You don't look like you're from around here.
Warum bist du aus Deutschland? I want to prove me.
Welcome to America. We don't want to hear. Go back home. Abandon ship.
Welcome to St. Louis, son. Beer for my friend, please.
Thank you. For next time, this is the beer we drink.
Never had that nice. Dolphus Bush.
Many of you saw that commercial. It was a Super Bowl commercial, right? Great example of storytelling, right? Using those 4 elements. You have your setting, your characters, there was conflict, and there was resolution. All right, so remember those four. If you walk away with nothing else from my presentation, it's those four things: character, setting, conflict, resolution. All right, so now I'm going to talk about the 7 essential steps to story design. All right, taking those 4 core signposts and weaving them together to tell a story. Okay, step number 1, research your personas and understand their needs. Okay, so who's your audience? Who's your persona? In the case of Always and Like a Girl campaign, their persona was teenage girls entering puberty. Okay, clearly that was their targeted persona. Understand their needs or problems. Always understood that teenage girls in these formative years suffered from a lack of confidence. What's the target action? What do you want your audience to do? What is the takeaway or lesson? What's the feeling your audience has after they watch your story or hear your story? For Always, it was changing what it means to do things like a girl, right? That was their target action. Who said that doing things like a guy was the right thing to do? Step 2, choose your protagonist or your character. Your character can be 3 things. It could be your company, your product, or your customer. Choose your company as the character when your company is a world beater and owns a technological advantage, right, with protected patents or engineering prowess or possession of natural resources like a mining company. Or in the case of Budweiser, if your company has a unique origin story, then use company as your protagonist. Product. Use product as your character when the product is a world beater against the competition. And Apple did a great job using product in the Mac versus PC ads. Customer. Use customer as your protagonist when you want to build an emotional connection between you and your target audience. And that's the easy part, because it's really easy to build empathy using the customer. That's really the trend there. Step 3, set up the time and place. Create the world where your story takes place. The neighborhood, the street, is it imaginary, right? Is it historical? Is it fantasy? In the Budweiser commercial, it took place in Germany to America. In the Johnny Walker video, it took place in Scotland, but it also took place in the brother's mind. Start with the world in balance. This is really important. Most stories can be seen as an effort of all humans to restore balance in their lives. Most of us want a balanced life, right? Or life in order. So you want to start your character with their life in order. Step 4, choose the inciting incident. All stories need to have an inciting incident. It needs to have a catalyst for change that upsets that balance in life. In the Budweiser commercial, you saw Adolphus Busch leave Germany. That was the inciting incident. If he had stayed in Germany, there would be no Budweiser. In the Like a Girl commercial, right, the inciting incident was when the director asked the people on stage to do something like a girl, to run like a girl, to hit like a girl, right? And that was the inciting incident that set in motion the rest of the story. Step 5, define the conflict, okay? We talked about conflict and why it's important. There are 4 types. There's internal conflict, right? That's the conflict in someone's mind, right? When your character is battling demons. Physical conflict, that's conflict with things like the environment, an animal, an adversary. You saw the physical challenges that Adolphus had to go deal with when he came to America. Social conflict, Again, you saw this when Adolphus came to America. You're not wanted here, go back home. So racism. And there's other types of social conflict like educational institutions or political institutions. Personal conflict, that's conflict with friends, family, loved ones. Step 6, arouse an object of desire. An object of desire can be a physical object or can be an abstract object like love. The protagonist needs something to restore balance. So the protagonist thinks that by achieving the object of desire, that world balance will be restored. In the case of the Budweiser commercial, we saw that Adolphus Busch left Germany to make beer. That is his object of desire, to make beer. In the Johnny Walker commercial, we saw that the object of desire was freedom. Freedom was a recurring theme throughout that video. Freedom for both brothers from each other. Step 7, climatic action or resolution. Right, so this is where the character chooses a path that works. The world reacts in a positive way. The character achieves a positive outcome, achieves that object of desire, and his or her life is restored. The balance is restored. He or she learns what that world really is all about, and the audience surrenders to it. Now, the last part's important because if you do this well, the audience's mind is open, and it's open for a brief moment in time. And the mind is vulnerable. And that's where you project the logo, the tagline, the call to action. Right. So Phyllis mentioned this. All stories need structure. There needs to be a beginning, middle, and end. This is probably the most simplest of story, in which case there's only one arc. But essentially you want a beginning, middle, and end. A beginning is where you establish the character and setting. The middle is where you define your conflict. You have your inciting incident, right between the beginning and the middle, and then your resolution. Great example of storytelling, right? All right. It was a friggin' bank. How many people thought it was a motorcycle commercial, right? Yeah, exactly. It was a friggin' bank. Come on. So many of you might be thinking, well, Kelvin, that's just great. Those are great B2C examples, great expensive movies. By the way, that Johnny Walker spot was done by students, 2 film students, as spec work for Johnny Walker. Point here is that the most viral video that year that came out was the Jean-Claude Van Damme Volvo Trucks commercial. It was a B2B campaign, right? Nothing more sexier than selling commercial trucks, right? But the numbers speak for themselves, right? 50% of truck buyers said that they're now more likely to choose Volvo next time they look at a truck purchase. The mind is a story-making machine. This is the magic part, right? If we give the components to our audience, they will supply the missing parts. There's plenty of science that backs this. Okay, I'm not going to go into the details, but our brains are wired for storytelling, and I'll prove it. Many of you guys are familiar with this famous Norman Rockwell painting, right? It's just one painting, just one visual. Take a look at it. Look at the face of the police officer. Look at the face of the boy. We have our characters. We have our setting. Our minds are already figuring out what the conflict is, and we already know what the resolution is. Of course the boy's going to go home. Of course there's a happy ending. Of course he's going to learn from this experience. How do we know all that? Just from looking at this picture. It's magic. Look at these NyQuil print ads, right? Just 2 visuals for each ad. Moms don't take sick days, dads don't take sick days. Again, setting, characters, conflict, getting our kids ready for school or a camping trip, but also conflict in that the parents are sick. Resolution, they take NyQuil so that they don't have to take a sick day because they can't afford to take a sick day. Stories told in print, right? So you don't need a fancy commercial to tell a story. In fact, you could do it in a blog post, in written form, right? So this is an example of an Oracle blog post for ERP, Enterprise Resource Planning, right? Titled, What Happened When My Thermostat Moved to the Cloud and Why It's Like ERP. A few weeks ago, I replaced my 20-year-old home thermostat. After 20 years, I figured it was finally time for an upgrade. And as I was fiddling with plastic and screws, it occurred to me that this activity was remarkably analogous to what companies experience when migrating from last century on-premise to modern cloud ERP systems. I mean, it's kind of a stretch, but still, right? All right, so now it's your turn. Tell me a story using character, setting, conflict, resolution. I'm going to show you 2 visuals. Someone here, tell me a story. Okay, so Michelin and their famous campaign, putting babies in tires. Okay, tell me a story behind this campaign. I do not want to hear a story but a baby physically in a tire. Okay, that's not the point of this. I want to hear a story behind this campaign. Anybody? Someone? Yes, back there.
The story is that the new Toyota parked on the side of the road with a blown tire because Toyota puts cheap tires on their new cars. So there's mom and her 4 children and the little baby stuck on the side of the road in a busy freeway. And of course the resolution is that they get wise and they buy Michelin tires.
Okay, not bad, not bad. Okay. I was wondering where your character is going to come into the story, but I got
well, the character would be the mom,
yeah,
who
exactly.
gets home and demands that they put real tires on the car. Sort of a true story.
Okay. Speaking from experience, all right. We like those true stories. Okay. Okay. How about this one? What's the story behind this tagline? Anybody? Come on. What, no one wears Nikes? So I'll give you a hint. Nike is not, their competitors is not Adidas or Reebok, right? Their competitors are couch potato and obesity. Okay, does that give you guys a clue? Someone tell me a story.
Is it on?
Yes.
My friend Stephanie Putnam had a very big accident water skiing and became a quadriplegic. And she was very depressed for over a year and just sitting in her chair. And one day, another friend took her for a carriage ride, and she became enamored with driving horses. She's put so much time driving horses with a huge community around her today that she went to the World Championships in Hungary to drive horses and came home winning 3rd place. She is now the most amazing guest speaker for people to just go do it.
Terrific. Outstanding. Well done. Is that a true story? Yeah, I can tell. It speaks from here. Well done. I leave you with this famous quote from Maya Angelou. I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. So as content creators, that's a new yardstick, right? Is how does my content make you feel? So now that you know how to tell a story using character, setting, conflict resolution, what's your story? Thank you. I think we have like 30 seconds for Q&A.
George Bina from Oxygen XML. So my question of telling stories,
No.
or we just all can be taught to learn, so we can learn that.
Yeah, that's why I started off with the whole art songs. Most people don't have that native talent. Now, you probably know some of these people who were born with that gift. Like Oprah Winfrey, born with that gift, right? And you probably have friends who can just talk on end around a campfire with great stories. They're probably born. Like some people are naturally born to public speak, right? Some people need to work hard at that. I think most people need to work hard at public speaking. Most people need to work on storytelling. And they don't know how to start with storytelling, and that's why I give you the 4 signposts.
Right, thank you.
Any other questions? All right, terrific. Thank you.